this. Can each of you share what well-being means at your institutions right now? How are you defining it, wrapping your arms around it? And let's have Sherra, and then Terry Ann, and then Josh share. So Sherra.
Thank you for the first question. If I can start, I always like to level set, as I like to say, and always share that we typically like to use wellness and well-being as the same term, and it's not the same. I will say, like, prior to us logging in, Josh stole my thunder. So we at the University of Utah also use the inter-association definition of well-being, but just to make sure we're all using the same term. With it not being the same thing, wellness is like the baby up under the umbrella of well-being. It's a component of it. And so wellness focuses on like the proactive movement, the lifestyle approach, and our practices to well-being. So what we call the footsteps. While well-being encompasses like the overall life satisfaction, your quality of life, your purpose, your holistic health. So that's what I like to start with, to make sure we're all using the same language and also a more simplified term. And so the interassociation and what that term means is that when you look at all of the associations within higher education that we all may be a part of, everything from NERSA to NASPA to ACHA to ACPA and everything in between, we all decided within the last year to say, why don't we come together and have one definition that we all can get on board with? And so we came up with that definition. And so to be very simple, how are we applying that? Because it's about the action. How we're applying that to our campus is really trying to build out a culture of care. And so we have to look at that twofold. How are we doing that from our students' viewpoint as far as interpersonal? And then how are we building that as far as a culture for our community? And so, in looking at it, that I oversee our students, and also from the community standpoint, as far as the culture, it's an ongoing state. It's ever evolving. And even today it is evolving as we have to serve a diverse student and faculty staff population. But the overall intent is to achieve, to help our students to achieve their full potential and to support them personally here on this campus, but also as they hopefully to persist and graduate, to make sure that they have the tools to be community focused and also to engage back into the communities that we send them back to. And so we use a wellness wheel that has 9 components, everything from physical. We do incorporate cultural and spiritual. I know people often ask, with us being in a predominant religious state, we very much hone in on the spiritual wellness component by saying that spirituality is not religion. It doesn't necessarily incorporate faith. And so we try to make sure for our students, they understand that spirituality is about your purpose, your passion, who are you, and in that development. And so we want to make sure in using this comprehensive approach to well-being, again, going back to that life satisfaction, that purpose, that holistic health, have we created an ecosystem that is sustainable? That means constantly approaching it with from a lens of flexibility, that also that we can often pivot and also assess, are we creating holistic and integrative approaches to all of our students' needs, to make sure that we're increasing resiliency and making sure that our services and programs are equitable. Because at the end of the day, once they enter and once they exit, are we creating holistic health and wellness?
Thank you, Sherra. I really appreciate that. Terry Ann, how about you? How are you thinking about this at Lehigh?
So similarly, we have a number of dimensions of student well-being that we consider. Emotional, which supports students' mental health needs; intellectual, in that sense, thinking of academic development; environmental, which considers our lived environments; financial, which supports financial literacy and management. We think about occupational well-being, guiding students through their study choices and preparing them for professional life. Physical, which emphasizes physical health and wellness, and thank you for that distinction, Sherra. Sexual well-being, which supports the understanding of sexual health, identity, and gender equity. Social, recognizing the need for students to build community. And spiritual, which again, as Sherra pointed out, really encouraging students to live in alignment with their values and beliefs, and not necessarily focusing on religion per se. And so thinking holistically and broadly about well-being. In my area, traditionally, the focus would have been on the academics, but we realize that the students are not ultimately here for a piece of paper, and there's so many other dimensions that we need to focus on in order for students to develop that resiliency and to be successful. And we can talk about how we're defining that, but I would say that having that kind of holistic self-awareness is part of that success. And we're thinking of the students well beyond the time when they're at the institution. So that I would say is our definition.
Yeah, lots of good crossover. The wheels are very similar. And then Josh, how about you? Similar themes?
I would say ditto with the process. Obviously, Sherra stole my thunder. We were using the inter-association definition. So thanks for leading us in there. And we have 8 dimensions, not the 9 for it, but it's very similar in that, folks. And so it really is the broad collective approach to well-being and all of the spaces. And I think that's an important, Terry, and I love your comment, like it's environmental, it's a built environment. Like what are those services and spaces we're doing that create access to well-being beyond simply providing resource or support? And so it's the preventive approach. And sometimes that preventive approach is what do we put in place that allow people to experience well-being even before we bring in health promotion outreach or financial well-being, or what are those spaces that allow students? So I think that's an important part of the conversation, that it's not just the toolbox that says, oh, this student needs help, how do we provide help? It's how do we remove the barriers before they even experience that becomes a part of well-being holistically. I think, Elise, you had alluded to, and I want to acknowledge here on our campus and on many, there's an additional pressure on well-being today. And so how are we supporting students for that? And I think, Sherra, you alluded to it, the individual approach. What is this focus on care and well-being? We really have taken that to look at the existing communities of care that we already have in place and individual support for students. So as we speak right now, we have a Dish It Up program going on in our multicultural center. It was previously scheduled, weekly event that happens, but today's event was intentionally scheduled to be an election discussion. That's probably more important today for that community as a result of it, that I think it's an acknowledgement that well-being is ever changing and evolving and is responsive to what's happening around us. And that there is no one singular approach to it.